I think sometimes we also forget that we're not just mentoring in a leadership role. We're not just mentoring the parts that are tactical to our work. We're also mentoring them on how to be holistically productive. We're mentoring them on how to pursue their passions and balance and integrate their work and life. So I think that it's an important component to motivating teams.
Hi, I'm Chris LeBrun, your host of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. As someone who's never been afraid of dreaming big and going for it all, I often find myself with a lot on my plate. I'm a husband and father, a nonprofit fundraiser, and an entrepreneur. What I've realized is my view of productivity was pretty toxic. After decades of believing that in order to do more, you had to work harder, I began to see productivity as this beautiful thing. Holistic productivity is the idea that you can accomplish your professional, personal, and purpose-driven goals in a healthy way, and doing so will make you happier and more fulfilled. Join me each week as we break down myths about productivity, share practical tips for maximizing your time, energy, and focus, and hear from others about their productivity journey. This is the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here for episode number 20 of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. My name is Chris LeBrun. I am your host. I'm a productivity coach, and I have an exciting episode for you today with a special guest who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But thank you so much for being here. I know that you are probably doing other things while you're listening to the podcast. That's the beauty of podcasts, right? You're probably driving or, taking a walk in the evening, or maybe you got the headphones in while the baby's trying to sleep, or you're at the gym or something. But you are investing not in me, but you're investing your time in yourself. You're investing in your goals and your dreams. And I'm just so thrilled that you are doing that. The conversations that we have here on this podcast, they are designed to help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. So I just, again, thank you for prioritizing that, even as you are doing all those other things that you have on your schedule today. So I told you that we have a guest, and I want to jump right into the conversation because I know it is going to be fantastic. But I'm going to start off with a question. Have you ever wondered what the world of nonprofit fundraising and mountaineering have in common? That's maybe not a question you've asked yourself all the time, but the answer is our guest today, Joy McKee. Joy has scaled some of the highest peaks in the nonprofit world, and she has climbed on 2 of the so-called 7 summits. These are the highest peaks on each continent. Joy is an experienced fundraiser, woohoo, fundraisers, with over 25 years of raising money for higher education, for healthcare, and human services nonprofits. In her work as the Assistant Dean of Development for UCLA's Division of Undergraduate Education, she and her team were on the final phases of a successful $5.49 billion capital campaign. Yes, that is with a B, billion. She currently serves as the Assistant Dean of Advancement for the Boston University College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And in September of 2014, Joy acquired the ACFRE credential. This is the Advanced Certified Fundraising Executive. It is the most rigorous certification available in the world of development professionals. Fewer than 120 professionals worldwide hold the ACFRE, and it is a global designation of excellence and expertise and just thought leadership in the world of fundraising. Joy is also a friend and someone I've enjoyed learning from through the years, and I just love how Joy is always giving back to the fundraising community. She's presenting at conferences. She's the chapter board of the Association of Fundraising Professionals in Massachusetts. And so, Joy, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Chris, I am so to have this time with you today and to have this conversation. And boy, if anyone needs a shot of affirmation, they just need to check in with you. You are a wonderful reminder of some of the wins in one's life.
We are going to talk about those. I do want to say, though, can you have a job title that is less than like 23 words, right?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I almost feel especially in higher education, that we need to move to a little more of a simplified
Right.
organizer.
No, it's
manager,
great.
Liaison.
It's great, but it is a lot to print on the business card, I'm sure.
It's a lot, and Chris, just to keep it simple, I often get requests from my parents because, of course, people ask them what I do for work, and they'll say, "Honey, could you just send us just a little elevator speech each year to make sure we've got it nailed?"
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That actually leads me into like the first question, because I've talked about my fundraising experience some, and how this world of fundraising really has helped me understand goals a lot better in every area of my life. But how would you explain fundraising to somebody who thinks that it's just about asking for money? Because you and I know it's not that.
Right. And also, I think we grow up with bake sales and lemonade stands. And so we have a lot of philanthropy that's kind of intersected with social activities. And so there's, I think, kind of a pre-existing notion that it sort of is some type of product that you're offering, and that there's a sale that happens, and and any profit. So it really is. It's an interesting industry, and even in the time you and I have been in fundraising, it has grown and changed significantly. So it's a really good conversation. But to answer from my perspective, I think that fundraising has shifted a lot into what I would call donor advising, and the relationship building has always been a true factor, but I think the concept of sort of a transactional engagement was maybe a lot more present in our early years of this industry, and now there's been a real growth and sophistication with philanthropists, and so what their experience is, their journey, the relationships, the engagement that they feel. So I think that we have become, in many ways, more of a liaison, someone that makes certain that they're able to accomplish what they're looking to accomplish with their philanthropic dollars.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think I had somebody contact me yesterday, and it was about a planned gift, and we could look. You and I could go way deep into this,
we could go very
nerd out. We'll try to keep it high level. But the donor was a lot more educated than I have seen in the past, and so I love that analogy of being an advisor, somebody that she could bounce ideas off of, and maybe reinforce what she was thinking or already knowing, or add to that. So yeah, that's but I love that it's about relationships. That has what's kept me engaged in the process for 26 years or whatever it's been. But now I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but how did you get into fundraising? I mean, was that something that you always knew you wanted to do? Was it something that happened later in life? What was...
Who knew that it could be a career? We grew up thinking of perhaps some of the more traditional careers, and I wouldn't say that I knew I would be a fundraiser, But I did end up starting right out of college in nonprofit work, although that wasn't exactly what I went to college for, right? When I was in my undergraduate, I was thinking I might be a physician, and so I'm probably one of the few people who has a Bachelor of Science in journalism because I did all those pre-med courses.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of chemistry. So I thought that might be the path. And then I realized I was a lot more into wellness than I was into perhaps more of the practice of medicine. And at that point, then kind of hit the panic button of, oh no, now I have a journalism degree. Am I going to be a journalist? Do I need to be an attorney? Do I need to?
Right.
So ended up taking a year off. I moved. I was in Oregon at a time where I graduated from undergraduate, and then moved to Tennessee, which is where I started work at a small nonprofit, and that was it. I just really loved my role as a director of development. So I had a little foot in management. I had a little foot in the kind of fundraising side, and then had a little bit of public relations marketing, which just was this perfect combination of things I loved for the purpose of the mission of a nonprofit. And I leaned in, Chris.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. We talked about how fundraising is so goal oriented, and I know you've been at that small nonprofit where you were kind of the gal doing it all, right?
That's right.
You've also been on big teams and led teams. How do you motivate, or how do you stay motivated, and how do you motivate your team to deal with all of those goals as they're changing?
No, it's a really good insight and a really thoughtful conversation, because I think we have all of these combinations as you grow in your expertise in fundraising. You begin where you're just kind of learning how to get in front of people and have conversations about the mission and their interests, and that's just, it feels so overwhelming. And there's so much learning. And then you begin to add on with this idea of management and what it means to bring a team along and mentor. And then you add in the leadership component, which as you move toward being a chief development officer in this case, and you're kind of bringing all those things together, it's a huge, for me, and this might come as a surprise, but it turns out I am an introvert, so a learned extrovert.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of you. There's a lot of energy in listening and paying attention and reading between the lines and the nuances. So how do you learn about yourself? And I've had a few different opportunities along my career that usually come with a moment of hardship and a moment of feedback, whether it's from a mentor in my life or whether it was from a donor, that began to remind me that there's an importance to vulnerability and being authentic and honest with yourself about where you're at. So some things might be very intrinsic about where you re-energize and find your motivation, and other things might require some reminders from others that perhaps you have extended yourself past the point of where you had the strength inside. And so that's when you learn, oh, by the way, I can't do this on my own. I have to be intentional. And so I think that was it, is I reached a point in my career where I couldn't just power through. I had to say to myself, in an authentic way, if I'm going to be able to have the thoughts, the wisdom, the moments, the ability to learn and then share those learnings, if I'm going to have all of that, I'm going to have to learn myself on things that I'm curious and about, and that rejuvenate me and challenge me. So that I think, and I'm trying to remember at what point that was in my career, but I would say I was at least 10, maybe 8 to 10 years in.
Mm.
And when I really, and I find that it comes when you level up, right?
Yeah.
When you kind of level up each time in your career, and you're in kind of a new space, that
Yeah.
you have to begin to turn to a more intentional motivation. So that was the foundation for me. Motivation has included things like mountain climbing,
Yes.
things like reading, things like continued education,
Yeah.
things like curiosity and sort of
Mm.
pairing strengths with things that perhaps might not be my strength, but I'm curious about where I could go. All of those things have motivated me over the years. I'm a puzzle. I like puzzles. I like
Mm.
problems to solve. I like
Yeah.
challenges.
It's interesting to hear you say that. I feel the same way about myself, and maybe that's like the trait that fundraisers need to have. I don't know, but because every donor is different. You can't just go into one meeting and then have it go this way and go into the next meeting with a donor and expect that it's going to be exactly the same,
That's
right?
right.
It's not
Right.
rinse and repeat. So yeah, that's good. I mentioned that you were out at UCLA.
You
You had a
did.
$5.49 billion capital campaign. Why not 5.5 billion? I mean, like
That
what's another
extra.
10 million between friends, right?
Why? You know, their goal was under 5 billion, and so everything over
Okay.
4.5 billion was kind of icing on the cake, if you will.
Yeah.
But to your point, 10 million, like, why
Yeah.
not just find that little bit of an extra?
Start looking under couch cushions or something, right? But
That's
but
right.
let's step back and explain a little bit about a capital campaign and what makes that different from other types of fundraising, and why that's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important vocabulary. So often, historically, we've referred to capital campaigns as campaigns that are focused a bit more on infrastructure
Mm.
and buildings and things that are more what we would call bricks and mortar. And then over the years, they've expanded campaigns, things like um, comprehensive campaigns, which
Mhm.
may include some capital, they may include programmatic, they support. I would say that in UCLA's case, it was comprehensive.
Mm.
And I think in general, and I guess I've been at this about 25 years now, Chris, time is flying
Yeah.
by. But, in general, I've seen a kind of a shift in at least higher education fundraising, where bricks and mortar is still there,
Mhm.
but there's a bit more focus on building programs and centers and institutes and naming those. And a lot of times they aren't necessarily in conjunction with a space or a building.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting shift, and has spoke a lot more to the direct needs of what, in at least in this case, higher education is needing, which are things like endowed professors,
Yeah.
endowed graduate students and fellows,
Scholarships.
scholarships, student support that's kind of broad range too. For
Mm.
example, seeing students have internship opportunities and providing the funding that they need to be able to be paid,
Mhm.
instead of perhaps working at a fast food, or
Yeah.
um, as a barista. They can focus in on things like undergraduate research and be paid for it. So there's a lot of that kind of fundraising that has happened, and I think thus it has informed campaigns a lot more these days.
Yeah. And that's been my experience as well, but these sit sort of outside of the regular fundraising goals. So when you're raising $5 billion, you're also raising whatever the annual sort of, say, operating that you need to raise each and every year, right? So
That's right.
how do you balance those sort of very different goals and stay motivated kind of in each area, keep your team motivated in each area?
Yeah, so it's really right now, I actually in my work at Boston University am at the front end of that. So your question is well timed
Mm.
because at UCLA I was at the end
Yep.
and we had some matching challenges and things were looking good and there had been a lot of infrastructure that had already been set up for the campaign. And so I was building out more of what undergraduate education needed in order to sort of kind of the long-term success of its fundraising initiatives. So it was a much different style of work there, and the team was motivated because we were kind of on that last push, right? There's kind of
we
let's
can
get
see the
this.
finish line.
We can see the finish line, and let's make things better for when we're done celebrating and moving forward. So that was a different. This work that I'm doing currently is much different in that exactly what you just said. We have been working out the kinks and building the infrastructure to make sure we have a solid annual fundraising program that's consistent and individuals are engaged. There's a community of philanthropy surrounding it. And now we add on all of that campaign planning, the ideas, looking at things through a different lens. What does it all hands on deck mean? And so, so what I found, Chris, is that teams are, as I've spoke at conferences and I've met individuals, teams are really struggling with leadership. And they're struggling to see where they fit in kind of being given tasks and marching orders and sort of told what to do, and versus feeling confident that they have a leader that is walking alongside them, that can answer questions, that is seeking answers and advocating and minimizing work that doesn't need to be done and focusing in on the work that does need to be done, one that understands. And so I'm finding that is becoming a lot more rare, and it's a concern of mine, and I talk about with my team often about how I see that democratic management and leadership, as well as the walking alongside and advocacy. And I think that just being that transparent about what you're doing for them and mentoring and your emphasis on their career and their professional trajectory and caring, this motivates. This is motivating because they kind of they want to walk alongside you, and I think that has been such a gift to me, to after all these years of fundraising, to be able to have that kind of energy and interest.
Yeah.
So that's one piece. I think the other piece of motivation is really understanding, like getting to know what team members are excited about and kind of trying to cater and mold the type of work that they can do that plays to their strengths and just excites them. So I think that's a motivating factor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at a conference last week and they reiterated something that we know, but we always have, I always have to remind myself of that. And it's lean into your strengths more. Don't lean into your weaknesses. We sometimes try to think that, hey, if I just take this course or read this book or study up on this and practice more, I can be better at the thing that I'm not good at. And when in reality, by doing all of that, we're wasting valuable time on those things that we are experts at or that really fill us. And, so leaning into those more and finding other people to do the things that is, that we're not good at is part of that balance of leadership. And it was an important reminder for me. I loved hearing you kind of say the same thing there.
It is such an important reminder. I also think, we have fun, Chris. It's there's a lot of distractions and things and goals and just always coming at you in this profession.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can't have fun with each other, I had a strategic planning session with my team just at the end of what is our fiscal year, and we had kind of a strategic day where we're sort of thinking and just having kind of thoughtful conversations, and we had a day where we went kayaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had fun, and we challenged ourselves, and these are the kind of small things you can do, kind of plan throughout the year, that just bring that good energy. And then each week, if you can think of what the needs are of your team, which could be that I just got back from vacation, and I hope that nobody from the team hears this podcast before. I haven't given it to him yet, but I brought back some goodies, right? Some chocolate and some things that we do this show and tell during our team meetings, where everybody can bring something to the team that's show and tell. And so this time I brought it's called Cranberry Sweets. It's this amazing candy from Bandon, Oregon. It's a whole thing. But so, we kind of inject that into what can often be some heavy loads that the team is carrying.
Yeah, and you mentioned you're at the end of your fiscal year, because for academic calendars that ends June 30.
That's right.
And so, but what I've always found interesting about fundraising is we get to the end of the year, we've met our goal, maybe our annual goal for the year, but immediately it starts over again, whether it's July 1 or January 1, you're right back in it. And so, yeah, taking those moments to celebrate a little bit about what you have accomplished before you dive back in. And I don't know about you, Joy, but have you ever had a goal the next year that was smaller than what you just raised the last year? No, they're always going up, right?
They don't. I think you said something that listeners will really resonate with, Chris. There's very rarely a moment it's like we should back off this goal a little.
Yeah.
We should. Oops.
Yeah. No. You raised too much money last year.
Yeah. Oops.
So it's challenging, I think, to go from celebrating to right back into the trenches almost, and planning out the new year and the new goals.
It is challenging. And so that's kind of how I will sequence some of our moments of togetherness, which I think brings a lot of motivation. I will do kind of a year-end celebration, and then I do sort of a year like kickoff, like welcome back. And then we do a little end of year around just as before we go into a winter intercession. And then it's kind of full blast through the spring till that end of year. So we try to kind of keep a nice cadence of celebrating and focus. And I think sometimes we also forget that we're not just mentoring in a leadership role. We're not just mentoring the parts that are tactical to our work. We're also mentoring them on how to be holistically productive. We're mentoring them on how to pursue their passions and balance and integrate their work and life. So I think that it's an important component to motivating teams.
So that's a perfect transition, into your life as an adventurer, because you've had some moments, and I'm following along on Instagram through the years, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so jealous of Joy right now. No, but it's amazing. Like I'm living vicariously through you all these years. But you've had some really exciting things that you've done. How do you balance some of that time with work time with play, and why has that been so important to you through the years?
It's such a necessary thing to have gone through your life and to look back and say that whatever mountain it was that you wanted, or whatever bucket list or whatever thing that you had a passion for, that you do it. And I think that in many ways it provides for us sort of an intrinsic, relatable component of who we are when we talk to donors who are doing something that they really have wanted to do. And that at the end of what is your legacy as a fundraiser, it's the same type of conversation that our donors and philanthropists are asking themselves. What is my legacy when I am done walking this earth? So I think you have to go for it, and it is definitely going to mean some difficult conversations with your manager, or some not with me. I'm very supportive, but I've had moments with my managers. As a matter of fact, right when I started at UCLA, I had shared with them that I was headed off for 5 weeks to Africa. So they knew when they hired me. But once the rubber hits the road,
Right.
and you're headed off to Africa, and you're out of contact, and you're climbing Kilimanjaro, it has a little more weight. Where's Joy?
Yeah. Wait, you were serious about that?
We thought we thought that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
There can be some tricky conversations, but at the end of the day, making a case for yourself is just as important as making a case for the mission of your organization and making a case to a donor. I think it is a thought process that they're all interrelated.
Yeah. So, for the listener, I'll highlight some of them, things that you've done. You been trekking in the Himalayas, 230 kilometers, or something like that. You did the Tour de Mont Blanc in Europe. That was 170 kilometers. And these are treks. These are hiking around sort of in the mountains, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then you mentioned Kilimanjaro, which is in Tanzania, the highest peak in Africa, 19,341 feet. You did that in 2017.
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro has been on my bucket list since I was a little kid.
Oh, Chris, you have to go.
No, I know I do, and it will be done.
Good.
But tell me about that experience, because Kilimanjaro, for people who, and I'll get a little mountain nerdy here as well.
Oh, yes, good.
This is like the highest freestanding mountain. It's not part of another range, and so you're there in the African, I don't want to say jungle, but the tundra there, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden there's this mountain, and you go up, and there's so many different climate zones and all of that. So it's a very unique climbing experience. What about Kilimanjaro is exciting for you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Kilimanjaro climb for a lot of different reasons. There are multiple routes of Kilimanjaro. I did the Lemosho route. Okay. And just as you said, you go through a lot of different fascinating ecosystems, and they were just kind of eye candy, if you will, because each moment it's something you really haven't seen before. And Kilimanjaro had a lot of highs and lows on it, which I think is an important lesson. Although I climbed a lot, the reason I really wanted to do Kilimanjaro, besides it being epic, was I wanted to get up in that altitude and see how I performed in that high altitude. Right. So it was an interesting journey for me. Starting at the base, it was pouring rain, so everything was muddy and just kind of a little bit miserable. And they have this saying on Kilimanjaro, because it is such a extreme altitude, gain. They have
Yeah.
a saying called pole pole, and it means slowly, slowly. And the goal on Kilimanjaro is to get to the top. And so the more slowly you approach and just enjoy the climb, the
Yeah.
more successful you're going to be. So it was a really a fun way of thinking, just getting started. And then you head through that jungle, and there's monkeys, flying through the trees, and then you clear the jungle, and you kind of get into that interesting. It's not tree line because it is, but it isn't because
Right.
it's kind of deserty. But it moves into this real sort of moonscape look, and it has what I can best compare to sort of Joshua Tree National Park, these kind of interesting cactus type flora and fauna. And then it becomes very Mars moonscape on Kilimanjaro very quickly. But one of the memories that I will never forget, and I will work to not get too choked up, but it was pretty powerful. So some of the things that you think as an athlete or as a person who's taken on physical challenges, sometimes it just changes. And for me, my more typical way of kind of fueling up before a climb was to kind of get some of that protein, chug some electrolytes. And so I did that on summit day. We were at 16,000 feet. I did that, and it immediately soured my stomach. And of course, you're feeling the altitude. Everyone on the team was. And you leave at 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're just trudging. It's pretty brutal feel to it. But it's a few thousand vertical feet because of course you're headed up to 19, so you've got a pretty extreme climb ahead, and all you can see in the dark are these lines of headlights right going up the zigzag. So it's dark, it's cold, you're feeling the altitude. In my case, my stomach was soured, so I wasn't able to really feel like I could eat something, and so your energy's low. And just as we were getting underway, our guides, who were African and from the area, they began singing some local folklore type songs that had been passed down through the generations that were just talk about motivation. First, clearly they weren't feeling what we were feeling, or if they were, they had a different approach to getting into your mind and like suffering. They had this beautiful song that they all knew and that they were singing and humming as we were ascending. And by the time you get up to about 18,000 feet, you sort of clear those switchbacks, and the sun starts to rise. And I'm sorry for those who may believe in more of a flat earth. You can actually see the curvature of the earth because it's freestanding, and the horizon, you can actually see the sloping, and you can kind of see some of the different striations of the atmosphere. It was the most breathtaking exposure that I've ever seen, at least at that moment. And just that experience of the climb was pretty neat. And then of course you get to the top and you take your wait in line, get your picture with that sign, and get on out of that altitude.
Right. And you're describing summit day, and people like my wife would say, why in the world would you want to put yourself through that? Everything about that sounds terrible to a lot of people, right? Waking up at 2 a.m. and trudging, a couple thousand feet of elevation, and the stomach and everything. So why do it?
Oh, well, I've heard different things over the years, because it's there, because it was a challenge, because it was, on my bucket list to try. But I think For me, I have a couple of things. One is I don't know what it is, Chris. I like to be above the clouds. There is something inspiring to me about being above the clouds, and it's just in me. But then I think, why am I curious about that summit? And I think there is something about the human spirit and mind and sharing kind of unique experiences with others that it kind of feeds my soul. Things like those moments of seeing how our guides tackled a difficult climb where they were taking good care of us and climbing themselves, and seeing what their spirit was and where they drew inspiration. I don't know. I found some version of that on each of the challenges that I've taken on.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. The next year, 2018, you went to another one of the 7 summits, Denali, and that's up in Alaska. That's the highest point in North America. Different experience on Denali. Talk about that.
Denali's a hard mountain. I've even heard Mean Mistress.
Yeah.
Denali it's a challenging mountain because you carry 100 pounds up the entire mountain. And unlike Kilimanjaro, which is fully supported and you kind of have a day pack, so you're able to handle the altitude and everything sort of with a light load, Denali is not that kind of a mountain. You have a 60-pound pack and a 40-pound sled, and it is very cold on Denali. And there's a lot of different approaches to Denali. One of the challenges is with the Kahiltna Glacier. If you go when it's too warm, the glacier is difficult to walk across because of crevasses. If you go when it's too cold, you're dealing with negative 40 degrees and snow. And so it's all different kinds of approaches to Denali.
Yeah. Literally and figuratively.
Literally and figuratively. So I had always had Denali on my radar because I had been climbing the highest points in the United States. And Denali, of course, is the highest point in Alaska, as well as being the highest in North America. And it's all day on Denali at the time of year I climbed, which was kind of end of June, beginning of July. And so you don't even realize each of the sequences of sort of remoteness and danger that you're going into. And it really, shortly after I came off the mountain, there was actually quite an accident where one of the glacier planes flew into the side of another mountain, and no one survived that. So when you're jumping on with all your gear to the airplane, just even to get over to the glacier, you don't necessarily think about the risks that you're taking at each stage. But I can say this, that before I left, I knew I was taking a big risk, and I definitely had all my affairs in order. It's that kind of a mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were very, very fortunate, if you will, in that we had a lot of great weather while we were on the mountain. The team that was in front of us, because I climbed with an expedition group that has multiple teams on the mountain during climbing season. The team that was in front of us actually had been on the mountain you tend to not be on longer than 22 days. You take food and supplies for 22 days. And they had been on the mountain for 18 days and had full-blown tropical storm, which was piles of snow. And they in order to not basically be buried alive in snow, they had to do 30-minute shifts of shoveling all day, all night. And we came on just as that weather was clearing, and so they were in position at 10,000 camp, where as soon as that weather cleared, they basically ran up the mountain to summit. But can you imagine after that level of snow and survival and struggle for 18 days to then kind of just put on your boots and run up? I guess it would have been about,
another 10,000 feet.
Another 10,000 vertical feet to the summit. I mean, mentally, talk about a challenge. So we waltzed in what could only be considered beautiful weather, and kind of made our way, very systematically up the mountain, and got to 17 camp, which is the camp that is considered the summit camp, where you then head over the Audubon and onto Denali Pass and summit. And, it's got a lot of moments along the way as you are pulling your sled, as you're caching, acclimatizing, getting to know a team. 3 individuals that were on our team actually had to go down because of the altitude and other challenges. So it really is a lot of moments. And I remember being at 17 camp because it started to get a lot colder the higher you got up the mountain, and you're losing that oxygen. And I remember looking at my boots and thinking, boy, that is going to be so hard to put on those boots. Your mind starts to think about conservation of energy, right? You start to really, but we had the misfortune, if you will, as it relates to the summit, in that by the time we got to 17 camp, the weather was deteriorating a little, and we actually were geared up and ready to go for the summit. And we got stuck behind a couple other teams who were struggling on the Audubon, and our guide felt that after a couple hours sitting it's very cold, your muscles get cold, it's very hard on your mind to not be moving in that type of temperature and environment, that he felt like we needed to turn around from that situation. And so we headed back to camp, and actually the weather deteriorated quite a bit that day. And even those that were struggling on the Audubon, they actually had to, they got stuck in some weather patterns that our team had to help with some rescues, bringing them back. So we actually stayed in hopes of one more weather window. We were at 17 camp for two more days. There's a pretty significant climb between 17 and 14 camp that you really don't want to get stuck in weather and have to navigate your way down. So anyway, we all made the call to turn around and head back down. And we were on the mountain 18 days, and we were the last team off for the season. So it was quite eerie as you're leaving, and you're hearing, there's nothing else. It's so remote, and you're hearing this storm come in, and you feel this big in those mountains. You feel teeny. For those that aren't watching, you feel teeny, and you really are sobered by the realities of the importance of meeting the milestones of catching that airplane out, and not getting stuck even at base camp for another week or two. You never know. We would have been. It would have been potentially. I mean, the team in front of us was about 18 days. The storm could have been in for 18 days. In which case, you are starting to look for some rations because of the type of supplies that you brought with you. So I just feel so grateful for the experience, and for obviously here today, safety and wisdom on the mountain. But it's certainly hard to turn around, isn't it?
Yeah. And how do you balance that? Because it's that goal that you've always been looking for, and you've gotten to experience part of it, but not the full experience of it. I mean,
Yeah, and I know I have friends, I have individuals who were on that team. One who's gone back 3 times and hasn't been able to get to the summit, and one who did go back and was able to make the summit. So it really, I think there is a time in one's life where you do evaluate the reason you're doing the goal. And Chris, I'll add, it's not an inexpensive endeavor.
Right.
to climb a mountain like Denali.
Right.
So it does require some resources. And so I really evaluated after coming down. Denali is definitely the max weight that I can carry. As for those that don't know me, I'm 5'6", 130 pounds. 100 pounds is my maximum,
It's
and
a lot.
so it's a lot. And so I definitely felt that because my focus wasn't to climb the 7 summits, it
Right.
was to climb the highest summits in the United States. For me, Denali and what I accomplished there, and my main goal was that I didn't have to turn around because of something I didn't do to prepare. So I felt that that was true. I left it all on the mountain, and I don't feel the same kind of press to go back.
Yeah. I've done that.
It's glorious, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, but I guess the summit was important to me, but it wasn't as important as the experience that I had being there.
No, and I love that because I think that's a lot healthier. To be able to say, it was something that I was able to do. It was not because of me that I wasn't able to complete that. I think that's great. I think that's, and again, you're still here. That's a win.
That was a win. That was a win. I felt so grateful to have had both those wins. The win that I felt good and I could have made the summit, had the opportunity, believe I could have made the summit, had the opportunity presented itself. And I also was so grateful for the conscientious, thoughtful wisdom. My guide, the guide that I worked with, he has climbed Everest 14 times.
Wow.
He's so impressive. I learned so much from him. It was such a gift to have the opportunity to climb with him.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, right? Choose who you journey with and learn on the way. I love that.
Yeah. Do you see any similarities between the fundraising goals that you have to deal with on a daily basis and some of those experiences on Kili or on Denali? I mean, are there any similarities there?
It's so funny, and anybody who is listening might think you and I had talked about this already, Chris, but we haven't.
We haven't, no.
Completely with so, but and there's no way we could have, because this just happened on Tuesday or I'm sorry, on Wednesday. So we're rolling out some of the vocabulary regarding our kind of future organization in advancement here at Boston University. And our leadership team is using language like peaks and mountains, and as we're and they're using words like North Star, things that we would very much relate to in a mountain climbing environment. And so I'm chuckling a little at your question, because yes, there is direct, including when we're speaking about kind of accomplishing goals and our focus, and even kind of lumping significant achievement goals, whether it's we want to be at $450 million a year in our shop, that's a peak. Or maybe we want to organize and focus our engagement opportunities, and that's a peak, right? So it can be utilized in a lot of different metaphors.
Yeah, that's great.
In other words, I'm seeing direct correlation right now, Chris. Direct correlation.
That's awesome. The last thing that I want to talk to you about, and is just how you've poured back into the fundraising community. The ACFRE is not an easy designation to get. It involves a lot of mentoring. It involves a lot of speaking. It involves a lot of just giving back to the community and to the professionals that are in the industry. Why was that important for you? Was that another peak that you needed to go after, or what was that about? Why was that so important to you to go do that?
And in doing it, Chris, and because you also are such a contributor to our industry, it's extra.
Yeah.
Our work takes a lot of moments
Yeah. Yeah.
from our days,
Yes.
and so it is definitely a decision.
Yeah.
And I will say perhaps there's more than one reason, but one reason is the absolute joy I get from hearing and sharing and having industry relationships outside of what my work environment
Right.
is. I just absolutely cherish, and the ACFRE process was worth the effort because of the community that I
Yeah.
have gained, the experts, the wisdom. Talk about internal motivation, just kind of seeing some of the incredible things they bring to the table. I'm inspired by them. So perhaps that is a bit of a selfish reason for giving, if you will. But boy, that has been, I just have received so much from my industry colleagues because
Yeah.
of the what feels like very little that I give back. That would be one thing. The other is because we are a bit of an industry where continued education is the only way to really become an experienced practitioner.
Mm.
You have to be able to pair that kind of external learning with the mentorship of industry colleagues with the experience that you might be having on the job. I feel that we have to be intentional about keeping those educational opportunities alive and well
Yeah.
in circulation, whatever we can do to create that access. So I feel strongly about that. And it's very simple why that's how I learned. And I feel a
Yeah.
deep sense of gratitude.
Yeah. No, I think you and I both had great mentors coming up in the industry, and I have definitely felt like um, that's important to continue for the next generation of young fundraiser coming right out of undergrad, who doesn't know anything, just like, I was at one point, like we all are. It's so important. And so I love that you're doing that.
And it's pretty special. It's pretty special, the Association for Fundraising Professionals. It's the
yes.
fact that it exists and that we have access to it and can contribute. Very special.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Thank you, Joy. Again, this has been fantastic. I've loved hearing about all of this, and I appreciate you sharing your time. The way that I end all my interviews
Yes.
is with some questions. This was inspired by James Lipton, who is host of the Inside the Actors Studio show. And so just rapid fire answer these questions. We'll go through them here. Number one, what motivates you?
Solving problems, puzzles, organizing things. I love it.
What discourages you?
Too many rules.
Amen. One word that describes you at your best.
Oh, attentive and inspiring. That's 2 words.
We'll allow it. One word that describes you at your worst.
Escaping.
Other than family or work, what gives you purpose?
Creativity, self-expression, pursuit of curiosity.
What guilty pleasure brings you joy?
Oh, all sorts of terrible music, Chris. But but sometimes they have amazing lyrics, and I just love to smile, dance, laugh, or just feel like I know this is terrible, but it's hysterical.
How do you celebrate a win?
I like to honor people and invite people that were with me on my journey to celebrate. I love to honor them in that space.
How do you bounce back after a loss?
Oh, I'm bringing back memories of Denali, losing that summit. I think tapping into empathy, the divine, creativity.
Yeah. Who was the last person you expressed gratitude towards?
I just spent a couple of weeks with my parents who turned 70, and while I was there, I made it very clear how grateful I was for their unwavering, unconditional acceptance and sacrifice and active presence in my life.
Yeah, that's great. If you could go back in time, what would you tell your 25-year-old self?
Intentionally build a diverse circle of wise people around you.
Yeah, very good. Joy, thank you so much. I've loved this time talking with you, sharing, hearing your stories. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. What a delight.
Well, that's it for the show today. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you as well. Check out the show notes, holisticproductivity.com/20. Maybe we'll throw up some links there for how you can connect with Joy if you want to connect with her on LinkedIn or something like that. But that's where you can get all the show notes. Make sure that you are subscribed on your favorite podcast platform. You can also watch on YouTube. And when you subscribe, when you follow, then you get the next episode when it drops on Tuesday. I've got another great interview lined up for you next week. You are not going to want to miss that. So make sure that you subscribe and follow. And if you liked the show, especially if you liked Joy and the stories and insights that she shared, rate the show for me. That will help others find it. We love seeing 5 stars, or you can leave a comment on the ratings there about what you like. Make sure you also follow on all of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn. I just joined Substack, so you can check me out there. And also, again, on YouTube at Wholistic Productivity. A lot of great productivity tips, motivation, and insights there. Again, thank you so much for listening. As always, my goal with this podcast is to help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.